When my mother died, something inside me stopped working. Not like a dramatic collapse, more like a quiet flicker that just went out. She passed in her sleep. At least, that's what they told me. That she was peaceful, that it was her time. But the part of me that knew her really knew her didn't believe it. She wasn't sick. She wasn't tired of life. She was strong, right? The kind of woman who had 100 plans at once. And then, suddenly gone. My father said she went to bed with a headache and never woke up. He didn't cry at the funeral. Didn't say much actually. Just shook hands, nodded, stared straight ahead while people whispered how composed he was. I thought maybe that was his way of coping. So I didn't push. I should have. The first month after she passed, I lived on autopilot, cleaning out her closet, handling bank stuff, calling distant relatives who forgot she even existed until now. The house felt wrong without her. Too quiet, too cold. My dad started spending a lot of time in the garage. Said he was organizing her things, but her things were already packed away. By me. One day, I brought him dinner and noticed he'd locked the garage door from the inside. I knocked. He opened just a crack. "Just dusty in here," he said. "Go eat. I'll be there soon." His eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if it was grief or something else. That was the first moment I felt it. A distance, like he was protecting something. Not himself, not me, something else. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, I was going through old books in the attic, ones my mom used to collect, when I found a copy of Jane Eyre with a loose spine. It was her favorite novel. I opened it gently, and something slipped out. A letter, folded, yellowed, handwritten, with my name on it, to my daughter, for when I'm gone. My hands were shaking before I even unfolded the page. The letter wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. It read like something written in secret, fast, desperate, but clear. "If you're reading this, I'm gone." That was the first line, and already I couldn't breathe. I sat on the attic floor, dust on my jeans, heart pounding like I was about to hear her voice again. But what came next shook everything I thought I knew. "I wish I had told you sooner. I should have. But I was scared. I always thought I could fix it, or survive it. I was wrong. There are things your father didn't want you to know. Things he made me carry alone. But I need you to know they weren't your fault. None of it was your fault." That line, "none of it was your fault," that was when I knew. This wasn't about her death. It was about her life. About what happened inside this house, when I wasn't looking. The letter didn't go into detail. No names, no dates, just quiet confessions. He wasn't always this way. Or maybe he was, and I refused to see it. But by the time I realized who he really was, it felt too late. And you were still so young. If you find this letter, don't confront him unless you're ready. He's careful, he's proud, and he knows how to twist things to make himself look like the victim. I felt nauseous, like the floor under me wasn't real. I read the letter 3 times. Each time, a different sentence hit me harder. "I tried to protect you, even when it meant staying quiet. Please don't hate me for staying as long as I did. I hope you build the kind of life where secrets aren't needed. And I hope, one day, you forgive me for mine." By the time I folded the paper, I couldn't stop shaking. Everything felt different. The house, my memories, my father's eyes. I thought of every time he'd dismissed her, called her too emotional, made her feel small in front of others. The way he always insisted on keeping family matters private. How he never let her work. Never let her speak too long without interrupting. Never let her leave the room during fights. And suddenly, all the things I'd labeled as old-fashioned or strict started to look like something else. Control, manipulation, fear. And now she was gone, and I was here, holding the only truth she ever managed to leave behind. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. My father had spent years controlling the narrative. Now it was my turn to listen and decide what to do with the silence she left behind. I didn't mention the letter. Not to him. Not to anyone. I hid it inside one of her old scarves, rolled it tight, and placed it at the bottom of a showbox she'd once told me to keep. Just in case. And then, I started watching. It's strange, once you stop trusting someone, their words start sounding like noise. You stop hearing what they say, and start seeing how they say it. My father never once asked how I was feeling. Never sat with me in my grief. But he loved to say things like, "Your mother was too sensitive. You don't need to look through her stuff. It's just junk now. Junk." That was how he described the woman who raised me, who left behind a letter so heavy I could barely hold it. So I started looking. Not through her obvious belongings, he'd already sorted those. I searched the places he wouldn't think to check. Inside old board games. Behind books she never read. Drawers she once told me not to open because they were just papers. And slowly, things started surfacing. A small notebook, tucked behind a sewing box. Inside, only a few pages had writing coded at first glance, but heartbreakingly clear once you knew what you were looking for. June 11, he took my phone again. Said I don't need outside noise. I told him I needed to call my sister. He said, "Why? So you can gossip about me?" August 2 lied again. Said I forgot to pay the water bill. It was his mistake, but he blamed me in front of our daughter. Watched me cry and said I was hysterical. Entry after entry. Nothing criminal. Nothing you could take to the police. But everything patterned. Intentional. Classic emotional abuse. Gaslighting. Isolation. Control. She had documented it quietly, carefully, and I was holding it now, years later, with her voice echoing between the lines. But what hit me hardest was the one entry near the end. If anything happens to me, please don't let him raise her version of the story. He's good at lies. He wears charm like a suit. That was when I realized he didn't just erase her voice while she was alive. He planned to keep doing it after she was gone. He never locked the garage because he was grieving. He was clearing her, erasing pieces of her she tried to leave behind. That night, I waited until he was asleep, and I went to the garage. Quiet, careful. What I found there made my skin go cold. Boxes not labeled, taped shut. Inside them, torn notebooks, letters half burned, a framed photo of her with the glass cracked, like someone had thrown it. He hadn't packed them. He destroyed them. I took what I could. Anything with her handwriting. Anything he hadn't ruined completely. I put them in my car, and for the first time since she died, I felt something besides grief. I felt rage. Not loud, not wild, just steady, the kind that grows slow and doesn't go away. The next morning, I didn't look at him the same way. He was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee like nothing had ever happened. Like the woman who kept this house alive hadn't been erased piece by his silence. "You're up early," he said. I nodded, sat across from him, looked him dead in the eye. And for the first time in my life, I saw it. The performance, the calculated calm, the need to control how I reacted. I didn't flinch. I just said, "I found one of Mom's notebooks." He froze, not visibly, not dramatically, but just enough for me to know that he knew exactly which notebook I meant. He set his coffee down carefully. "You shouldn't go digging through the past." That told me everything. Not denial, not confusion, control. "It's not the past if it's still affecting everything," I replied. He didn't answer, and I didn't ask anything else, because I wasn't looking for explanations anymore. I was looking for clarity. That week, I made copies of the letter, of the journal entries, of everything he tried to destroy. I met with my aunt, my mother's sister, someone he'd pushed away over the years. I showed her the letter. She cried. Then she told me things I'd never heard before. About the way he isolated my mom. About the rules in their marriage. About the time she tried to leave. And he threatened to make her look unstable in court. That's why she stayed. For me, I felt sick, but also sharper than I'd ever been. Because now I had something he couldn't erase, witnesses. I reached out to a few family friends carefully, told them I'd found writings from my mom, asked if they'd ever noticed anything. One of them said, she always seemed nervous around him. I thought maybe she was just anxious. But now, that makes a lot more sense. Piece by piece, the silence cracked, and the version of her he'd been selling, fragile, moody, too sensitive, began to crumble. Not with drama, with truth. I didn't post anything online, didn't confront him in public. I just stopped protecting his image, stopped repeating his version of events. When people asked how she was in her last months, I told them, she was exhausted. She felt invisible. She was trying to survive a house that was killing her slowly. Some didn't want to hear it, but I didn't say it for them. I said it for her. He tried to pull me aside one afternoon, said I was tarnishing the family legacy. I laughed. She was the family. You just lived in her shadow. He didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. He'd spent years making her feel small. Now, the smallest thing I did, telling the truth, was enough to ruin the entire story he built. I moved out of that house. Not because I couldn't stand being near him, but because I refused to breathe in the air he poisoned for so long. I found a small apartment not far. Old floors, quiet windows, and a door that only I had the key to. I brought with me just a few boxes, clothes, books, and every piece of her I could save. The letter, the notebooks, her favorite mug with the chipped handle. I kept them in a drawer by my bed, not to cry over, but to remind myself of who she really was, not the version he tried to sell after she was gone. Strong, smart, quietly rebellious. The kind of woman who didn't fight with fists but with grace, endurance, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, her daughter would see through the lies one day. And I did. Some days I still feel the grief, but it's different now. Less sharp, less suffocating. It sits beside me, like someone I once loved and finally understood. My father still lives in that house, alone. He doesn't call. I think he knows I'm not the daughter he used to manipulate. I'm the one she hoped I'd become, the one who chose truth, even when it hurt. People still talk about my mom in soft, sad tones. She was so delicate, so fragile, so sweet. I let them say it, but in my head, I always correct them. She was powerful. She was silenced. She was surviving. And now, she's being remembered, right? Not as a victim, but as a woman who mattered. Because I won't let her disappear again.